Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. It is me, the sassy blonde writer, here to talk to you about different types of story structure. Different stories must be told in different ways. Today I'm going to tell you all about the different ones that you can use and where they are most common. This is by no means an exhaustive list because there are a lot of different types of story structures, and honestly they're evolving, creating new ones and new story structures and narrative structures every single day. Spoiler alerts for Hamilton, Romeo and Juliet. Is that really a spoiler? Assassin's Creed 2, Groundhog Day, The Incredibles, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, Hunger Games, Star Wars. There may be a couple more here. I don't know. All story structures have the following elements in common. You have the setup, the inciting incident, character growth, plot twist or midpoint reversal, more on that in a second, rising action or build-up, climax or confrontation, falling action, and resolution, the ending. Each story structure that I'm about to go over includes all of those elements. What makes them unique is how much time they spend in each part. If you are a planner, this video is going to help you figure out how you want to structure the plot of your book because, like I said, different stories have to be told in different ways. You're not going to unfold a mystery the same way you would a romantic comedy. You're not going to go through the hero's journey necessarily if your story is about trying to get the guy. If you are a pantser, keep these in mind as story beats as you write. This will help you when you get to the editing process. This will help you make it sure that your story flows all together. You don't have a lot of rambling or pointless scenes in your story. If you are editing, this will also help you because you can figure out what you need to add or to cut from your manuscript. Think of your story like a piece of pie. At the end of the day, you're going to have a story, you're going to have a slice of pie. The structure is just different ways you can slice it. Like I said before, I have extensive notes on this subject because there's a lot to go off of, and of course I will link to all my sources, everything I use to research and write this episode down below. This one I'm going to talk about is the hero's journey. Now this one is extremely common, especially in Tolkien, Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit. So there are 10 steps in the hero's journey. You have step 1, that's the ordinary world, that's your slice of life, a day in the life of blah blah blah. For example, you have a day in the life of a hobbit in the beginning of Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit. You could also think of Rick and Morty following the hero's journey. Then you have step 2, the call to adventure. That would be, freaking Gandalf showing up, and a lot of times, especially older fantasy books, the call to adventure is literally someone being like, hey, want to go on an adventure? Like, step 3 is when you cross the first threshold. That's kind of like the first leg of your journey. Then you have step 4, you have trials, friends, foes, blah 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 blah. Then your magical mentor, or the mentor with supernatural aid, Gandalf. Then you usually have the dragon's lair, or the really dangerous part, is the moment of despair. That's when you think all is lost or everything's gonna go terribly. That's usually your midpoint reversal. They usually escape, then they finally get the treasure or whatever it is, and then homeward bound, time to go back home. And then rebirth, or the champion's turn, where they go home and they're all exalted, yay, woo, everything's fine. Or, you just start it all over. The hero's journey is usually described in a circle because it kind of just keeps going and going and going. 2-act structure. This one is not really talked about, even though it's extremely common, especially with sitcoms and Broadway shows. It's also known as the 9-point or sometimes 9-act structure, but it follows the same basic outline. So you have Act 1, give you a little slice of life, then you have the inciting incident, then you have the hero's response to the inciting incident. It's usually flawed, and then they enjoy a major win. For a moment, it seems like the goal is almost achieved. Then immediately in the second act, Act 2, the hero experiences the second inciting incident as part of the midpoint reversal. So a lot of times in Broadway shows, this is where they cut to intermission. A response to the midpoint reversal is the right response. A lot of times the midpoint reversal will also show how much the character has learned over the course of the first act. Then you have the climax, the drama happens, and then you have they either enjoy the final win, or we trust that in the future they would continue to do the right thing. Here are a couple of examples. Fiddler on the Roof, the Cossacks' invasion of the wedding as the turning point. That's right before intermission. Hamilton is a really good example, or 2-act structure, because Act 1 and Act 2 are basically 2 completely different shows. Act 1 chronicles Alexander Hamilton's rise to political power, ending just as he's appointed the Secretary of the U.S. Treasury. Then Act 2 shows the gradual downfall of his career and his personal life, ending with his death in the duel with Aaron Burr. Now, unlike most musicals, this is part of the reason why I love Hamilton and I love talking about it. Unlike most musicals, usually you have the protagonist does the wrong thing in Act 1, and then then Act 2 is where they fix everything. In Hamilton, it's completely flip-flopped, where in the beginning, you know, he's just this young, spunky kid helping the American Revolution, and then Act 2, you see how his newfound power corrupts him. It ultimately ends with his demise. Another example is Wicked or West Side Story. Like I said, this is really popular with different Broadway shows. It's also very popular with sitcoms.
Alright, and now we're talking about 2-act structure in sitcoms, so it's a little bit more formulaic, and it's a little bit different than just regular 2-act structure. So you have Act 1 is the opening or the teaser, because that generally happens in sitcoms, and that is something that would be covered more in screenplay writing or something more specific to sitcoms than your opening, which would be your setup and theme. Then you have the section where the problem is set up or your inciting incident number 1. Then you have the rising action where the character is dealing with the problem. Then you have sort of a minor win or a minor loss right before the setup for the midpoint reversal, which is sort of your ending to Act 1. Then Act 2 starts usually after a commercial break, and then that's when the midpoint reversal happens. Usually it's a plot twist that happens about halfway through the episode, and that's when you have the main character's response for the rising action. So the rising action is still happening during Act 2. You have the hero's usually correct response. A lot of times in sitcoms, you have kind of a flawed response in the beginning and then a correct response because the character is learning something, ideally halfway through the episode, especially if you have what's called a lesson show, where they have to learn something like learn time management skills or learning how to ask for help, something like that. And then in Act 2, usually like 10 minutes before the episode, is where the hero has to actually confront the problem that was set up in the beginning in the inciting incident, and that is the climax or the confrontation of the story. And then you have the falling action, and then you have your resolution that happens usually about 5 minutes, where everything's all tied up together in a neat package and ends.
How do you pick which one to use? Think about what kind of story you want to tell. Like I was saying, different stories need to be told in different ways. It's all about how you want to tell your story and how quickly you want to go through it. Think about why you are writing the story and how you want to unfold all those details. So that's all I got for you today. Please like this video if you enjoyed it, and if you enjoyed this one, please hit that subscribe button. I post new videos 1 to 2 times a week. And of course, happy writing!